My tour group in Rome was standing before the Colosseum, and I was giving my speech about its history and eventual fall into disrepair. A man in a bright red USA hat interrupted me. "Hold on. I'm a construction guy and this doesn't make sense." I paused. He continued, "Why would they build it with all these holes and broken parts? It looks like they just gave up. Was it a budget issue?" In America, we finish our stadiums before we open them. I spent 5 minutes explaining earthquakes and 2 millennia of history, but he just kept muttering about shoddy Roman contractors. I was working as a barista in Vienna, Austria. An American tourist came in and ordered a coffee, then looked around confused. He asked me, "So where are all the kangaroos?" I politely informed him that he was in Austria, not Australia. He argued with me for a solid 2 minutes, insisting his travel agent booked him a flight to see the kangaroos, and that I, a local, must be mistaken about the name of my own country. He left in a huff, complaining that Austria was falsely advertising itself. I was waiting tables at a bistro in a small village in Provence. An American couple ordered a bottle of our finest local rosé. I presented it and poured a taste. The wife then flagged me down. "Excuse me, we need some ice for this. It's not cold enough." I tried to explain very politely that in France we don't put ice in wine as it dilutes the flavor. She looked at me with utter disdain and said, "Honey, I'm from Texas. It's hot. I want ice in my wine. Are you going to tell me how to drink?" My drink, I brought her a glass of ice, and she popped the cubes into her $50 rosé with a loud clink. While working at the front desk of a hotel in Iceland, a guest called down in the middle of the night, furious. "Your advertisement promised the Northern Lights. I've been looking out my window for an hour and I don't see anything. Are you going to turn them on, or do I need to ask for a refund?" I had to explain that the aurora borealis is a natural phenomenon, not a light switch we control. He sounded genuinely disappointed, as if he'd been scammed by nature itself. In a crowded market in Marrakesh, I watched an American woman try to buy a lantern. The vendor told her the price in Moroccan dirham. She pulled out her phone's calculator, did a conversion, and then announced loudly, "I'll give you $10 for it." The vendor politely refused, asking for the local currency. She replied, "But the dollar is stronger. You're making a profit. Don't you people understand basic economics?" She seemed to think the US dollar was a universally accepted currency that vendors should be grateful to receive. I was on a train from Florence to Venice. An American family was sitting across from me. As the train pulled into the Santa Lucia station on the water, the teenage son looked out the window with a horrified expression. He turned to his dad and yelled, "Oh my God! Dad! Look! The whole city is flooded. Is this because of that global warming thing?" The father patted his shoulder and said, "Don't worry, son. I'm sure they have a plan to pump it all out for the tourists tomorrow." At a restaurant in southern Spain, an American couple was struggling with the menu. The waiter, who spoke excellent English, came to help. The husband said, "Ma'am, we just want some tacos. You know, with the crunchy shells, ground beef, and yellow cheese." The waiter explained that they were in Andalusia, and that was more of a Tex-Mex dish. The wife chimed in, "But you're in Spain and Mexicans speak Spanish, so you should have tacos." It's the same thing, right? I was guiding a tour at the Tower of London. We were discussing the crown jewels when a woman from California raised her hand and asked, "So, does the Queen have to check these out from the library when she wants to wear them? Or does she just come here with a key? It seems really inconvenient to keep your jewelry so far from the palace." She envisioned the Queen of England needing to make a special trip across town to get a necklace. A friend of mine is a flight attendant. On a flight to New Zealand, an American passenger asked her if the pilot could try to avoid flying over the ocean because he had a fear of water. She had to pull out a map and show him that New Zealand is in fact an island nation in the middle of the Pacific Ocean and that avoiding the ocean was geographically impossible. He asked if they could at least fly over the shallow parts. Overheard in a German bakery in Berlin, an American tourist pointed at a pretzel. "What's that squiggly bread?" the baker told him. "A pretzel." "Okay. Cool," the tourist replied. Can I get one of those, but without all the salt? I'm on a low-sodium diet. The baker just stared at him, holding the salt-covered pretzel, completely speechless. The man's wife then added, "And do you have any ranch dressing for dipping? I was working at a hotel in the historic center of Amsterdam. An American guest complained that his room was too small and the stairs were too steep. This building is a clear fire hazard. In the U.S., this would be illegal. You should tear it all down and build a proper hotel like a Hilton with elevators and big rooms." I explained that the building was over 300 years old and was a protected historical monument. He replied, "Well, that's just poor planning." On a bus tour through the Scottish Highlands, the driver was pointing out ancient clan lands and historic castles. A woman from the back of the bus shouted, "This is all very nice, but where are the battlefields where they filmed Braveheart? I want to see where Mel Gibson fought." The Scottish driver took a deep breath and explained that the movie was largely fictional and filmed mostly in Ireland. The woman sounded betrayed, saying, "Well, what's the point of coming to Scotland then?" At a pub in Ireland, an American loudly declared, "I'm Irish too. My great-great-grandmother's cousin was from here." He then ordered a black and tan. The pub went quiet. The old bartender leaned over and said, "Son, we'll pour you a Guinness, and we'll pour you a Bass. But in this pub, we pour them in separate glasses. You can do with them what you will." The historical ignorance was so thick you could cut it with a knife. I was on a safari in Tanzania. In our group was an American who was very disappointed by the lack of animal sightings in the first hour. He asked the guide, "Can't you just call them or something? Don't you have a special sound you make?" At the San Diego Zoo, the animals are always out. The guide had to patiently explain that we were in the wild, and the animals were not on a schedule for our entertainment. In a Tokyo subway station, I watched an American tourist get increasingly frustrated with the ticket machine. He wasn't trying to read the English instructions. Instead, he was just pressing the screen harder and harder, shouting, "Work! Come on, you stupid machine." A Japanese teenager politely came over, pressed the English button for him, and walked away. The man didn't thank him. He just said, "About time they got with the program." A guest at my hotel in Quebec City, Canada, asked me where he could exchange his US dollars for Canadian money. I directed him to the currency exchange. He came back later and said, "Why do they have the Queen on their money?" I thought this was Canada, not England. Don't they know they're not a colony anymore? I tried to explain the concept of the Commonwealth, but his eyes just glazed over. At the ancient city of Pompeii, a tourist was looking at the famous plaster casts of the victims of Vesuvius. He turned to his wife and said, "It's amazing how they all posed for the statues before they died. They must have known it was coming. Really captures the emotion of the moment." He genuinely believed these were sculptures, not the final moments of actual people. I was working at a cafe in Helsinki, Finland. An American asked me if we had any regular coffee. I showed him our drip coffee. He shook his head. "No, I mean like a Starbucks Frappuccino." "You guys have Starbucks here, right? It's an international brand." I told him the nearest one was a few blocks away. He sighed dramatically. "You'd think a capital city would have one on every corner. It's so inconvenient." On a boat in the Galapagos Islands, the naturalist guide was explaining Darwin's theory of evolution and how the unique wildlife inspired it. An American woman interrupted him to say, "That's just a theory, you know. We don't believe in that in my state. Can you just show us the funny-looking birds and skip the liberal propaganda the guide?" A man with a PhD in biology was stunned into silence. An American tourist in a Parisian fromagerie pointed at a wheel of Roquefort. "What's wrong with that cheese? It's all moldy. You shouldn't be selling that. It could make someone sick." The shopkeeper, a proud Frenchman, tried to explain that the blue veins were the entire point of the cheese. The tourist wasn't having it. "In America, we throw away food that has mold on it. It's called food safety." While visiting Egypt, an American tourist looked at the pyramids and asked our guide, "So, when do they turn the lights on?" The guide looked confused. The man continued, "You know, like the Eiffel Tower. Do they light them up at night, or do you guys not have electricity out here yet?" The guide smiled politely and said, "We do have electricity, sir. The pyramids are just older than light bulbs. A friend of mine works in a London cafe. An American woman once came in and asked for English breakfast tea. When handed a cup, she looked offended. 'No,' I said, 'English breakfast tea. You know, the kind we have back home. This just tastes like tea.' The barista blinked a few times and said, 'Yes, ma'am. This is England.' On a bus in Switzerland, an American couple asked the driver if they could swing by the Eiffel Tower before heading to Zurich. The driver, trying not to laugh, explained that Paris was in another country entirely. The wife frowned and said, 'Well, we're in Europe. It's all basically the same, right? Can't you just take a detour?' While hiking in Norway, an American tourist was frustrated by the steep trail. He turned to our local guide and asked, 'Why don't you guys build escalators or something? It would be way more tourist-friendly.' The guide deadpanned, 'Because we like our mountains the way they are tall.' In Greece, outside the Parthenon, I overheard an American woman ask her husband, 'So this is like, what a replica, the real one's in Las Vegas, right?' Her husband nodded confidently. 'Yeah, the one in Vegas is newer anyway.' A museum worker in Rome told me that an American once asked him where the real ruins were because the ones outside looked too dusty. The worker explained that ruins are, by definition, dusty. The tourist suggested they should power wash them once in a while for better photos. At a restaurant in Seoul, an American complained to the waiter that his sushi wasn't fresh enough. The waiter blinked. 'Sir, this is Korea. We serve kimchi, not sushi.' The man replied, 'Same thing. It's all Asian food anyway.' In Prague, an American tourist saw the astronomical clock and asked, 'Does it show the weather too?' The guide said, 'No, it shows the position of the sun and moon.' The man sighed. 'Well, that's pretty useless then.' At the Great Wall of China, a man from the U.S. was furious when told there were still several hours of walking ahead. 'Why don't they just build a shuttle or a moving walkway up here?' 'It's 2024. The guide replied calmly. 'They finished building this wall 2,000 years ago. They were not expecting tourists from the future.' An American woman in the Berlin Museum looked at a World War II exhibit and asked the curator, 'So, which side were you guys on again?' The curator just blinked and said, 'We've had time to reflect on that.' In Thailand, a tourist asked the hotel clerk what time the elephants come down the street. The clerk smiled awkwardly. 'Madame, we are in Bangkok, not the jungle.' The woman frowned. 'But I saw it on Instagram.' At a restaurant in Paris, a man from Florida complained that his steak was too small. 'In America, this would be an appetizer,' he said. The waiter replied in perfect English. In France, that would be considered excessive. A tourist in Venice asked a gondolier, 'How do you guys drain all this water out at night?' The gondolier stared, paused, and said, 'With a very large plug.' In Iceland, an American couple was shocked to see there were no trees near their hotel. The husband asked the guide, 'So, what do you people do for shade?' The guide said, 'We go indoors.' During a visit to a Scottish distillery, an American asked if the whiskey was gluten-free. The guide answered, 'Sir, it's made from barley.' The man said, 'So, that's a yes.' An American tourist visiting Stonehenge complained to the tour guide, 'You should put up some information screens or a gift shop closer to the stones.' 'It's just rocks otherwise.' The guide said, 'That's precisely the point.' In Morocco, an American couple asked our driver if we could stop by the Sahara for a quick photo. We were in Casablanca, over 400 miles away. The driver smiled and said, 'Sure, if you have 3 days.' At a cafe in Copenhagen, an American asked, 'Why do you guys use Monopoly money?' The cashier explained, 'It's Danish krone, sir.' The tourist laughed. 'You should just switch to dollars, they're easier.' A friend in Switzerland works at a chocolate shop. An American tourist once asked, "Is your chocolate imported or do you make it locally?" She said, "We are Switzerland." A tour guide in Egypt told me that an American asked him if the desert sand was real or brought in. "For tourists," he replied. "Madame, this is the Sahara. It brought itself." At a Japanese temple, an American woman clapped her hands and asked if she could book a time with the monks for a tea. Selfie. The attendant just bowed and said, "Meditation is free." While visiting Canada, an American tourist said, "I'm just going to Canada, not a foreign country." When told Canada was in fact another country, he got annoyed. "It's not like I'm crossing an ocean. This is basically just North America."